Hey, Dan.
Morning, Hannah. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Let me get
Just
Sorry.
FYI, this is recording right now. But
Yeah, I saw that. That's all right. I guess that's easy to edit if someone knows what they're doing, which I don't. Anyway, did you participate in the sessions yesterday at all?
no, I have a draft due today for
No.
another paper. So I've been
Yeah.
in the thick of it. Really.
Mhm.
How's it going so far?
I think, well, yesterday was a little bit of a nail biter, only in that our keynote is a U.S. senator, and apparently they often do votes on Tuesdays. So
wow.
there's a certain level of anxiety of wondering if the senator would get called off at the last minute.
Yeah,
And
seriously.
we really didn't have a plan B. I certainly don't have that many jokes to tell for 10 minutes. But yeah, but no, it was Senator Tina Smith from Minnesota. And she did a great job. She's a rare senator who really knows our issues and could
Yeah.
even mention ears and without flinching and know what that stood for. So it was good. Good morning, Amber. And Rohini, looks like Amber's okay. There
Good morning.
You
I was muted, of course.
Yeah.
At least we're practicing now, so I can remember.
Yeah, well, that's good. Or at least an advantage of these workshop sessions is that it's they're smaller and more informal, and so I think these will be fun to do. Morning,
Good
Rohini.
morning. Yeah, I couldn't figure out how to unmute. Like it took me a minute just to figure out what was happening. Like it was going back, but glad we had the time to kind of troubleshoot
Yeah, no,
these.
it's good to kind of get everything settled before you let the crowd in. I hope we have a crowd, but let's see.
Hi, Hannah. Good morning. Hi. Thank you so much for the script and all the troubleshooting and being our go-to person.
I don't like me yet.
At least it's smooth. So far, it's been pretty smooth having that script right there. One doesn't have to think what to do.
Hopefully it's helpful.
Yeah, very good. Ooh. Make sure I can find the documents when I need it.
So quick question, just from a timing standpoint. So there's presentations first and then the breakout sessions. And I think you told me yesterday, Hannah, but about what time do you think the breakout sessions will start?
So we have probably like 10 minutes to let people in, all that jazz. And then I think Dan and I are aiming for 10 minutes for our presentation each.
Mhm.
Okay. So about
maybe 25 minutes.
11:30. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Looks like I have to recreate our breakout rooms, which I'm glad I just checked that.
Yeah, I keep thinking I need to put the background for Zoom, but I keep forgetting. Oh, never mind. People get to see the blinds.
So if it's helpful, I just did that. It's on if you go to the video thing, the button, there's a little arrow up and it'll give you the option to choose a background if you want to do that. You don't have to.
Thank you so much. This is much better.
You're welcome. It's like, it works in all the different platforms. It's just a matter of where the buttons are, right?
Where the buttons are, I know. Half the time I'm trying to figure out that's the one, but thanks for sharing that.
Bruce.
And I don't know, did Lynn provide any updates or just based on earlier information about how many people are registered or indicated they would be participating in this?
I don't think I saw anything.
No, that's all right. I think that, yeah, I imagine many people won't show up even though they register. Just, I think as you register, you just click off what you think you're going to do and then
Yeah,
things come up. So,
totally.
but it'll be good.
I guess we'll see. I think Mike should be joining soon.
Yeah. Our host for this show.
Yeah.
Again. And let's see. So let's see, people have to have Chrome when they go to the shared document. That should just.
I think you can go on any browser to go onto Google.
Okay.
Oh.
Just trying to get my things lined up here.
Thank you for sending me the login information. I just realized if I scroll down far enough in the document, you already had it in the important info one. So
It's okay.
thank you for
Oh,
getting that to me this morning. Sorry, I didn't see that.
I should have sent it to you anyway.
I had some bit of panic attacks yesterday morning. Just where's that link? You know, but anyway, it all worked out. Amber,
Hannah,
go ahead.
just question for Hannah. Do you need to be signed into your own Gmail, or doesn't matter how you access your?
You don't have to be signed into a Gmail at all.
Perfect. Because I was signed in and then I signed back into the ACEEE account and then opened yours. So hopefully that should work. Like I can access it and type into it.
Yeah. It should work
Yeah.
without even a sign in. So.
Yeah, and we're just giving people 5 minutes, so
Yeah.
they shouldn't overwhelm us with stuff.
As a reminder, if they can't access the document for whatever reason, you can tell them just to type it into the chat.
Okay, good mode. And in Zoom, are the chats that we can capture those later, or they're?
That I know less about. Because it's weird in the breakout rooms. I don't know what you're able to save.
Okay. So
I know you can if you record it, because I've used Zoom before. Like if you record, it'll record the meeting and all the chat and all those pieces. So I don't know if we need to like record in the breakout rooms.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think so. We've told Lynn that we're just going to be recording this, and then if the breakout rooms don't record, we're just going to send her notes.
Yeah, I think that's probably the better plan. I mean, the recording could be a backup, but I think we can manage.
Yeah.
I see. Mike, I see you're entered in, but on mute and camera's not on. Probably a sign he's working on something else, but it's kind of hard to slot a conference in the midst of everything else. There's definitely an advantage of being off or on site someplace, because then you're just forced not to deal with all the other things, pretty much. Anyway, morning, Mike.
Morning, everyone. How did the first day of EER go for everybody?
It seemed to work on my end of things. The plenary was, as I was mentioned before, was a little anxiety inducing, just because our speaker was a U.S. senator, and you might have noticed that things are a little hot on the Hill these days. So I'm just hoping that she wouldn't get called away at the last minute and would be stuck with no plan B. But she came through in really good form, I think, and spoke intelligently about our issues, and clearly is someone a champion for them. So that was really nice to hear. But that was my impression. And then in the breakouts that I attended, I think also went well. But I was very curious to hear how others are perceiving things.
We had the moderated the load shape session with Alex Thiessen and Eric Wilson and who else? David Clement. And yeah, we didn't get many questions, though we were able to keep the conversation going. So I'd be curious to hear what the attendance were on that session and the other ones. When the time is right.
Yeah. Let's see how we doing. Oop, almost showtime. Any final questions or comments before we got about 2 minutes to launch? Now, do we have to run that video at the start of this? I hope not, but anyway. Hannah's looking at me like, oh, what are you talking about? Good. I think that's a no. That's fine. It's good to thank our sponsors, but it might wear a little bit thin if we just do it absolutely every time. So.
Anyone want to guess where I'm coming to you from this morning?
What did you say, Mike?
Anyone want to guess where I'm coming in from this morning?
Picture, right?
South Africa.
Is that what South Africa looks like?
I think like part of it on the coast.
Maybe
Never been to Africa.
maybe Chile, Patagonia, or possibly the West Coast, certain places in.
This is taken from a helicopter, and this is the Koala Coast of Hawaii's Big Island.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, when I first saw it, I thought of the Nepali coast, but it's not red enough. So I was like, it's not quite that coast. But I guess Hawaii would have been the right general location. So.
All right, so I think we're about. So Hannah, you'll.
Yeah, okay. I'll start letting people in.
So I think I'm gonna go to mute for now.
I am gonna mute as well, and I might be off video for some of the presentation, but I'm here. So.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our GEB workshop. We're just going to wait a couple minutes for people to join in. So if you're here, hang out. We'll probably get started maybe about a minute from now. So welcome to those of you who have joined us for this GEB workshop. And just maybe another fraction of a minute as people continue to join us. Thanks. Okay, good morning, everybody. I think this is a good enough waiting point to jump ahead and get started. Welcome to EER Day 2 and a workshop on grid interactive efficient buildings. My name is Mike Spiecian. I'm a utilities manager here at ACEEE, and I'm going to take just a couple moments to provide a quick overview of the structure of this workshop. And then I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues for some introductory presentations on GEBs and utility programs. You can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so here's our agenda today. We're going to spend until about 11:15 just doing an overview of the workshop format. And then we're going to transition to some opening presentations that will provide some hopefully useful background information that can seed our discussions later today. Today's workshop is going to have 2 breakout sessions, each of 50 minutes in length. We're going to have a report out on the second half of each of those breakout sessions, so we'll be able to share. We actually may compress that down and utilize more of that time for talking, depending on the number of people who end up in those groups. We're going to have a lunch break midway through for about 30 minutes, and we will conclude with a wrap up for 15 minutes. So expect this session overall to extend until about 2 p.m. Eastern time today. Next slide, please. Here are the key objectives for today's workshop. We would like to learn about examples of utility programs with grid interactive efficient building aspects to them. We'd like to explore methods to integrate grid flexibility into traditional energy efficiency and demand response programs. We'd like to evaluate how to overcome GEB barriers like outdated rate designs, lack of customer engagement, and others. And we'd like to characterize the key elements of what a GEB program might actually look like. Next slide. Given the total number of people who signed up for the workshop initially, we had made 4 breakout rooms. It looks like the number of people is small enough that we might not need all 4 of those rooms, so we may not do the full 4 breakouts. Instead, it looks like maybe we'll do 1 breakout, and it'll be a large room, so we'll just extend the amount of time that each of us gets to speak, I suppose, and then roll back the time for the report out. So everyone will get a chance to contribute, and we will have multiple facilitators to guide the discussion within that group. In the first few minutes of our breakout session, we're going to ask everybody to just consider a couple of key questions and contribute their thoughts to a Google document. So this is part of the benefit of our virtual format. We'll be able to collect the thoughts, see where initial thinking is, and then we will continue the breakout session based on that initial feedback. And if you are not able to access Google Documents, we'll have a backup plan in place. So no worries there. Next slide, please. All right, got through that quick. I'm now going to turn this over to my colleague to begin opening presentations. So Hannah, over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. So welcome, everyone. I'm really excited to get into these conversations on GEBs and hear what your organizations are thinking about in terms of GEBs. Just a little background. My name is Hannah Bastian. I'm a senior research analyst in the buildings program here at ACEEE. And ACEEE has been leading research on smart buildings as it relates to energy efficiency for the past few years. And the latest iteration of that has been in GEBs. Wow, of course, my lights just went out. 1 second. So anyways, another part of my role here at ACEEE is I help lead our Grid Interactive Efficient Buildings Working Group, which is for utility program administrators. And I'll get a little bit more into that down the line. But in my presentation, I just want to give a brief overview about what a GEB is and what that can mean for utilities and utility programs. So just starting off, what is a GEB? I mean, I think you've heard Mike and I say this acronym multiple times now already, but DOE really kind of pioneered this term a few years ago when they launched their GEB initiative. And it really is kind of in the name. So a GEB is a grid interactive efficient building. And when DOE defined a GEB, they kind of structured it around these 4 key characteristics. So the first is an efficient building. So it'll have persistent low energy use that minimizes demand. And that's just kind of our traditional energy efficiency measures that we're all aware of. And then, 1 second, I'm letting more people in. The second characteristic is connected. So it's a building that will have 2-way communication with the grid. The third characteristic is smart. So it'll have smart technologies that use analytics, sensors, and controls to actually optimize the energy use in the building. And so for, a commercial building, that could be a building energy management system, an EMIS, HVAC controls, lighting controls, all of that. And then in a residential building, that might be like a smart thermostat, a grid connected water heater, or a home energy management system. And then the fourth characteristic would be flexibility. So a GEB will have flexible loads and maybe also distributed generation and storage that can be used to reduce, shift, and modulate energy use. So it's really thinking of buildings as very efficient, very smart, and also acting as an asset to the grid. Slide. So DOE recently this year came out with a GEB roadmap, and in that roadmap, they highlighted some key GEB technologies. And this table I really like because it kind of frames the different technologies that are commercially available today. So that could be smart thermostats, grid connected water heaters, automated window shading. And then it also highlights in the second row technologies that are maybe on the cusp of becoming commercially available, but they're in limited availability, and maybe utilities are just starting to pilot some of these technologies. And a lot of those are like advanced sensors and controls, both for lighting and HVAC, and a few others. And then the last is these technologies that are probably farther down in the pipeline that show a lot of potential, but maybe aren't really ready for commercial availability, and they're still in the research and development phase. So I really like this table because it really highlights the different breadth of GEB technologies that are available today, but also might be available further down the line. And then lastly, just in talking about GEBs, I think we have this good concept about what a GEB can be, but sometimes we don't know what that would necessarily mean for the electric grid. So DOE's GEB roadmap really modeled out what the benefits GEBs can have for the electric power system, and they found that there is a huge opportunity for these buildings to bring value. So in the roadmap, DOE found that GEBs can deliver $8 to $18 billion in benefits to the US electric power system annually by 2030, which is about 2 to 6% of total US electricity generation and transmission costs. And the cumulative power benefits from 2021 to 2040 could reach 100 to 200 billion. And it could also result in 80 million tons of carbon emission reduced by 2030. And that's about 6% of total power sector emissions. So all this is to say is that GEBs can present a really large opportunity for our US power system. And so I think when we think about that, what ACEEE has really tried to understand is how GEBs actually apply to utilities and how they apply to utility programs. So for the past 3 years, ECEEE has been running a working group for GEB, specifically for program administrators. And we have about 30 members now. And the whole goal of our utility working group is to understand the opportunity for a GEB utility program, the opportunities that GEBs can bring for utilities, and also information sharing between our utilities. We host about 6 to 8 meetings every year. And in those meetings, we invite guest speakers to come talk about a wide breadth of topics that relate to GEBs. And that could include, we've had speakers talk about commercial building technologies like EMIS, building management systems. We've had speakers come talk about the behavioral aspects of smart technologies and how that interplays with demand response programs. And we've, most recently had someone come speak about innovative pricing structures and incentive structures to encourage demand flexibility. So we really tried to cover all the bases that relate to GEBs, and really try to get our members thinking about how that applies to their organizations and identify maybe pain points for them. And then also see if other utilities are experiencing the same pain points, or if other utilities have somehow gotten around that pain point, and really just share information between what everyone is working on in this space. And so as part of that, in our first year, we developed a white paper, just kind of looking at the current market for GEB programs, GEB utility programs. And this is probably not a surprise to anyone, but we found that there are no GEB programs out there today. And in thinking about what a GEB program could be, we were really thinking that it would be a program that balances both energy efficiency and grid interactivity. And in doing our research and seeing what kind of programs are out there today, we really found that programs either fall into one of 2 buckets. They're either energy efficiency focused or grid flexibility and demand response focused, but they're usually not combining the 2. And so we see that there's a huge opportunity to modernize programs, to integrate both, and kind of move on this curve towards a GEB program. And so in doing this, we've really kind of created this framework of this chart. At the bottom axis, you'll see we have energy efficiency, which could be like simple energy efficiency measures, like just, traditional energy efficiency programs. And then as you move along that axis, you get to smart energy management. So these are more advanced energy efficiency measures that are actually using smart technologies. And then on the left-hand axis, we have just simple demand response. So that could be a really simple demand response program where, customers receive a message saying we're going to have an event tomorrow, please curtail your load. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And then we have along this curve more complex load flexibility, where maybe we have automated demand response programs or DER aggregation pilots that are aggregating many different demand flexible loads for many customers to create grid value. And so the way that ECEEE is thinking about GEB programs is really thinking, how can we get programs to move along this curve of integration towards a GEB program? If you're just doing smart energy management, how do we get you up to here, up to this line, and also including some load flexibility measures, and vice versa. For demand response, how do we take a simple demand response program and start to include simple energy efficiency measures or even more advanced smart efficiency measures? So with that, I think I'll turn it over to my colleague, Dan, to share his research on how programs are beginning to integrate the 2.
Very good. Thank you, Hannah, and good morning, everyone. I'm really happy to have you joining this session, this workshop, as well as the conference. I hope you're able to participate in some of the other things going on over this week and next. I think we've got a lot of very, very exciting sessions, a lot of good new information and things. So, and chances to interact with your colleagues and peers. So again, welcome. I've been kind of behind the overall conference, so it's heartening for me to dig into a session like this. All right, so Hannah, go ahead. Oh, I'm Dan York. I'm a senior fellow with ACEEE, and been here working with our utilities program primarily, but also doing more and more with our local policy area as well. Been part of ACEEE for 20 years, so I'm kind of one of those old timers. All right, next one, please. All right, so my presentation here is just picking up where Hannah left off and just figuring out is what is out there for potential for some kind more of a GEBS program to build on existing or developing integrated energy efficiency and demand response, because that's a topic that ACEEE has visited and done research on. Actually, I go way back to like 2005. We wrote a report looking at such integration of programs, and so people have long recognized that it's a good idea to have a common platform to serve customers, and they don't really care whether it's demand response or energy efficiency. If it helps them cut their bills and provide other benefits, they're all in. So, all right, next one, please. So back a couple of years, we decided to look into the question of just what's out there today for in integrated energy efficiency demand response programs. So I'll update you on that research and look at the benefits of integration, what technologies we found, looking at the levels of program integration as that graph that Hannah just showed you is kind of our way of visualizing this progression towards a fully fledged GEB program. And then we did identify some example programs and kind of categorize them to show that there is kind of an evolution towards GEBs, if you will. And then especially we looked at the barriers that we found. So if integrated programs are such a good idea, why aren't they more prevalent, and why don't we have a GEB program out there? And so again, just thinking about the evolution to this vision of DOE and others have of a fully fledged GEB program. All right, next one. So benefits of integration, we kind of, again, we like to categorize things just to put them into different boxes to be able to understand and better characterize what's happening out there. So initially, the commonly realized benefits, we call that, are the customer bill savings, the increased participation in program satisfaction by getting a full slate of measures and assistance that helps customers. And it certainly can lower program costs if you have a single point of contact for multiple program offerings. That just clearly can cut down your staff costs and administrative costs for doing programs. So kind of the one-stop shop and one point of contact with customers is just very cost efficient. And then some emerging benefits that we identified was more in that there's clearly one of the key points for doing GEBs is to increase resource adequacy and improve grid reliability. If you target some of those buildings in areas that are experiencing kind of approaching capacity limits on distribution feeders and whatnot. So it's a way to serve the grid. And then earning opportunities with regulatory business models that can be structured so that there's shareholder incentives for achieving success with these kinds of programs. And then benefits not yet realized, things that once this goes wider scale, clearly there could be increased wholesale competition, wholesale prices by having a more flexible grid, flexible demand, and then also more of the ancillary services that support the grid operation. All right, next one, please. So for residential buildings, the technologies we found, the lowly Nest and other types of Wi-Fi enabled smart thermostats kind of ruled, and found a lot of that out there. Advanced metering infrastructure was also important to this if you're going to be differentiating time of use and things that you have to know, have greater granularity of the data. Can certainly be old school kind of direct load control switches can do it. And then an increasing number of mobile apps and marketplaces are developing in conjunction with people getting the smart thermostats. Next one, please. In commercial buildings, it's certainly they're more complicated. There needs to be both the smart components, some kind of central control system, and really most buildings have something like that existing, but that equipment has to be with embedded controls that can work with the grid interconnection connectivity. So next one, please. So what did we find? So despite all these benefits, that we really still found few fully integrated energy efficiency and demand response programs. Our data set was, we had plans for some of the other work we've done at ACEE for 52 of the largest electric utilities, and that included some in both investor-owned utilities and municipal utilities. And of the 44 plans reviewed, we found only 5 programs at really the highest level of integration, 22 programs with some degree of integration. Most of the programs are residential. We really found few C&I programs that were integrated. And again, smart thermostats were prevalent. It seems the gateway to integration, at least for the residential sector. All right, next one, please. And that's just a little bit breakdown of what we found, and we'll explain what we mean by these different categories. But recognition is simply that you've got an energy efficiency program, and you sort of let people know that, oh, we've also got this demand response. Cross promotion was a little more aggressive, that not only are you have one program or the other, but you're promoting them together. Administrative coordination was being able to, that the single oversight of the programs was happening. And then finally a single program. But again, there's the breakdown was just really didn't find that many single programs. So next one, please. So some programs are using creative ways to combine energy efficiency and demand response. And this is just a sample of those that we found from American Electric Power, energy management app for homeowners, working with their metering and household energy use. PG&E that provided additional energy efficiency incentives for their demand response customers. And Southern Company is just aggregated. They're big into establishing some really pilots and examples of fully aggregating the distributed energy resources. So including some solar and energy storage in addition to energy efficiency and demand response. All right, next one, please. And then on the commercial end, again, the recognition, there was, I'm not going to go through all these, but just providing some examples that show you how programs are using different measures and services for different programs and where they are in this. So for example, that Duke Carolina's Duke Progress, this program that did HVAC cycling demand response program, and then they pushed some thermostat savings as well. Cross promotion with ComEd. Again, they're at least promoting those programs together. Eversource was facilitating enrollment in energy efficiency and demand response. So those technologies that were eligible for both, they would try to enlist customers to sign up for the services that fit. Next one, please. Again, here's administrative coordination. So Excel Energy in Colorado, that for commercial buildings, energy management systems, you could get incentives for peak demand and energy reductions. Southern California Edison really coordinated the administration. So from applications and marketing, education, outreach, just to try to make it much more of a full service package rather than a bunch of different one-offs. And then fully integration, NV Energy, their PowerShift commercial energy services was a single program, and it really, kind of met that marker of offering a full full menu of rebates, whether it was energy efficiency and the technologies for demand response, and signing up for what was required there. All right, next one, please. So what kind of barriers, so again, if this is all such a good idea, why isn't it more prevalent? Well, by talking to people and looking through plans and just kind of getting a bit deeper picture of these programs, there's still internal organization of utilities that historically energy efficiency were kind of a separate branch from the people with demand response. Was a little bit more of the grid operation, and so those proverbial silos kind of kept things from being integrated. And they had different goals, budgets, business cases, and just coordinating and communicating it was an issue. Regulatory hurdles, the figuring out cost effectiveness for programs that deliver both gets a little bit thorny, or it certainly can be done, but it adds a level of complexity, and rate structures and funding. So if you're offering demand response, you need rate structures that are supportive of that, so that customers are discouraged from using power at expensive times, and they have incentives for using it off peak and the associated funding. And then the objectives are different for demand response versus energy efficiency. Do you want to save kilowatt hours, or do you want to save kilowatts on peak times? And then the technologies, despite all these tech advances in smart technologies, integrated, interactive, connected technologies, there still can be problems. I think this is especially the case for commercial buildings, where you're adding a whole level of complexity to what can be a complex system of the local control. So that's just another big step for some that they don't seem as interested yet. It's got to be proven. All right, next one, about to wrap up here, I think. So yes, key takeaways. So again, few fully integrated programs, that new technologies are creating opportunities for integration, and smart thermostats are most prevalent, and that we're going to need changes in organization and to get to to get to integrated programs. All right, why don't you go ahead, and I think this is a kind of walking away here soon. But this grid connectivity is increasingly becoming important. We need this capabilities for rapid growth of distributed energy resources. And again, no real programs yet. We see some research and demonstration projects. We heard from some of our working group members that they're using their own building for a bit of demonstration. But so, all right, next one. And what we hear from people in our working group and others, that these are some of the key barriers for smart buildings and GEBs: the interoperability, getting all these advanced technologies to communicate and not be so proprietary that you're locked into one and that one type won't speak to another. Cybersecurity is huge. Hear all kinds of horror stories. And workforce, getting people who are trained and competent to use these more advanced technologies for both operating buildings and for the grid connectivity. Next one. All right, so that's just a quick overview of the research we did, and I'll hand that back to Mike for the introduction to what we're going to do next here.
Great, thanks, Dan. So in our first breakout room today, we are going to be discussing how energy efficiency and demand response programs can move towards an integrated program approach. Next slide, please. So as we saw based on Hannah and Dan's earlier presentations, we know that the current landscape is largely broken down into two categories: energy efficiency programs and demand response programs. As Dan explained in his presentation, utilities are integrating them to varying degrees. Some are further along, others are really just getting started. But very few have reached, I think as Dan put it, the level for that level of integration yet. And so we thought that as a first step, with respect to GEBs, a first step should be integrating energy efficiency and demand response in some way, right? So this leads to our breakout room questions. Next slide. Those two questions are, one, how can energy efficiency focused programs move towards integrated programs? And the second question would be, how can demand response programs move towards integrated programs? So we can think of this a little bit as an intercontinental railroad. We're going to find a way to meet in Promontory Point, lay that golden spike, and have these beautiful integrated GEB programs. But how do we get there and have this most beautiful union? So in answering these questions, we want to know, what do you think are actions that organizations can take towards moving towards integrated programs? So for example, if you have a smart thermostat energy efficiency program, this could mean cross-promoting participants in which, or cross-promoting programs in which they can enroll their thermostats in demand response programs. Or if the utility doesn't have a demand response program, it could be recommending that they develop a demand response pilot program. So just as an example. The objectives of our next session will be the following. We want to explore methods to integrate traditional energy efficiency and demand response programs. We want to discuss approaches for overcoming barriers to integration, that is, for example, siloed energy efficiency and demand response teams, regulatory hurdles, conflicting objectives, technology barriers, different timelines, budgets, etc. And then we want to share experiences of successful or unsuccessful energy efficiency and demand response integration at your organization. The more case studies we can get, good and bad, the more insight we'll gain. Next slide. Okay, so here are the instructions for our breakout sessions. Since we started, we had more people join. So as the numbers have changed, our number of breakout sessions is changing dynamically. We're going to split the current crop of participants into 2 breakout sessions. One will be focused on residential buildings and the other will be focused on commercial buildings. If you're someone who's really interested in multifamily, just pick the room where you think that the issues will be more aligned with the aspects of multifamily that you find yourself interested or knowledgeable in. We'll try to hopefully aim for a 50-50 split. Once you enter the room, there will be 2 facilitators in each breakout session, and they are going to share a link with you to a shared Google document. This is a document in which you can type out initial thoughts, and where everybody, even if the room becomes sort of large, will have the space to make sure that their voice is heard and collected. For the first, that process of laying down your thoughts will last for about the first 5 minutes or so. And then the facilitators in the room will open up the discussion about responses to each of the questions within the breakout session. We'll probably spend between, not 25, maybe more like 35 to 40 minutes in the breakout sessions themselves, after which point we will come back to a full plenary as we are in right now, and we will do a report out from each of those sessions to make sure that the residential and commercial folks get to hear each other's insights before we end up breaking for lunch. Okay, next slide. Okay, I think with that, we are going to go ahead and open up the breakout rooms now. So Hannah, I will throw it back to you to share links. And I will also note, I do see a couple of questions in the chat. One of them as related to technology. In the second breakout session, we will have space to talk about technologies. So definitely we will get to that later in the afternoon. All right, Hannah, I'll throw it back to you regarding throwing us to the breakout rooms.
Yeah, I think I will open them. Hopefully everyone can join. You should be able to choose your room, but if not, I can help assign people who cannot choose.
I see people are joining now. Just at the bottom of your screen, you'll see that there's a little box that says breakout rooms. And it looks like we're getting a good 50-50 split. Great.
if you guys have not joined a room and you don't see the option, you can just type which room you'd like to join and I'll be able to assign you to a room. Okay, so last call to join a room. And if you don't join a room, I think I will just randomly assign you to one. To the person who just joined. Okay.
Yes, I need to join the commercial group.
Yeah, okay. Actually, the
Thank-
rooms are closing.
Thank-
But as the hours
One
passed,
second.
the young baroness grew old.
Thank you.
And despite her husband's warning,
I'd also like to join the commercial room.
Okay, yeah, one moment. Now we're having issues with the breakout rooms. Sorry, guys, just one moment. I'm having some technical issues. Okay, guys, sorry about that. It was a good test run. I need to, I guess when I recreated our rooms, I only created them for 2 minutes instead of 25 minutes. So I'm going to fix that and reopen everything. Okay, and I'll keep the rooms open actually for 30 minutes. All right, thank you. I'm gonna reopen. Sorry about that. Hopefully it should work. To whoever who just joined, I think someone joined. We're going into breakout rooms broken down by commercial and residential. So feel free to choose, or I can assign you to a room.
Thank you.
Hi, to whoever just joined, we are in breakout sessions and they're broken down by residential and commercial. So feel free to join whichever speaks to you.
Okay, thank you.
Hello to whoever just joined. We're in breakout sessions right now and they're broken down by residential and commercial. So feel free to join whichever. to everyone who just joined, we're in breakout sessions right now, and there's 2 rooms, residential and commercial, so feel free to join whichever you would like.
How do we join? I'm not getting like a presentation of a question to decide.
Okay, if you don't see one, I can assign you a room.
Can
Which
I
room
go
would
to
you-
residential, please?
Sure. Hi, to whoever just joined, we're in breakout rooms. So if you wanted to join, we're doing residential and commercial, and you can join whichever.
Okay, thanks. I would join commercial.
Okay, I can assign you.
Okay,
One-
thanks.
Yeah. Wait, you said commercial or residential? Sorry.
Commercial.
Okay. To whoever just joined, we're in breakout rooms. Feel free to join whichever speaks to you, residential or commercial. And if you don't see the option to join, I can assign you to a room. Hi, Tracy. If you would like me to assign you to a breakout room, let me know and we can do it.
Okay, hi everyone. Looks like we got thrown back into the main session. Welcome back, everybody. Sorry for my group for not announcing that ahead of time. It happened quickly on my end. We will have a few minutes now to debrief on what happened in each of our breakout sessions, the ideas that were discussed during the breakouts, as well as the ideas that were thrown onto our pages, our Google pages, and maybe we didn't have a full chance to discuss it.
Wait,
I am going
Mike,
to, yes.
Is everyone back?
I
I can't see.
It looks
I
like,
think I just see 3 people in the meeting room.
oh, looks like not. Okay.
I think I can end them and call everyone back. Oh no, it looks like it's just automatically ending.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I got thrown.
It's okay. I clearly don't know breakout rooms as well as I should. It says my screen is showing that they'll end in 20 seconds. So I think that's when everyone will come back in.
Okay, hi, welcome back, everybody. Looks like I got tossed a little bit early from my own group, but that's okay. We're gonna have an opportunity now to do a report out, and each breakout session can share some of the main ideas that came out. I'm going to start with our breakout group. We were the residential group discussing how to bring together efficiency and demand response programs to an integrated program in the residential sector. I will throw it to Amber to give a highlight and a synopsis. Though if anyone from our breakout group wants to add a little bit of detail or explanation or correction after the discussion, we welcome you to do so, and we're happy to capture that. So Amber, and then afterwards we'll throw it to Dan and Rohini to do a report out from their group. So Amber.
Yeah, thank you. So we were answering the first question, which was how can energy efficient focused programs move towards an integrated program? And the first thing the group talked about was co-promotion and how it can work. There's an example of co-promotion and using stacked incentives and using marketplaces as a mechanism with smart thermostats, and essentially then customizing the offering based on what the customer's actually using currently, whether it's gas and electricity or one or the other. And they're able to reduce summer peaking and get significant savings from that. Maryland is also an example. They have an affordable housing program where each utility runs their own demand response program. So there's a lot of examples of co-promotion as a solution. Centralized administration, there's barriers and challenges a little bit with that. One example was in California, they're doing reorganization to start to think about customer solutions for the entire organization as a whole. There's also an example of in the Pacific Northwest, Bonneville Power Authority worked on heat pump water heater connectivity and is the largest scaled activity. So it's a good example as well. As far as DER and EE, it really, there was also an example of teams working closely and looking at energy efficiency technologies and looking at forecasting that incorporates both. But the challenge with this example was just that each team has their own evaluation criteria and benefit cost analysis separately, and the M&V verified savings are different. So the kind of cautionary tale in that was just the amount of information can be overwhelming. So they're doing a really nice job of integrating these two, but there's still different criteria and cost benefit analysis. There were a couple other things thrown out as examples that really could be helpful. So one was an electric co-op example and a vertically integrated IOU. So both of those could potentially be considered as pilots or examples where some lessons learned on that level might really be very useful. And then we had just like 2 seconds at the very end where we kind of switched it around and we're talking about DR focused programs moving to an integrated program, and started talking a little bit about technology barriers and asking if it was a barrier. And I think the answer was kind of a yes to start. We didn't get too far in the conversation, but some of the things mentioned were just the lack of standardization and communication is a big barrier. And that, you know, the hesitancy to chase after one device and then have to edit the program the next year. And excited to see kind of some upcoming work from Energy Star and National Labs in that area. Those were from my notes, but please feel free, anybody from the group, jump in, add, correct me if I misspoke. But that's my little brief report there. So. Thank you.
Okay, I hear no additions, so I'll throw it over to Dan Rohini to give a breakout from the commercial group.
Dan, are you online or do you want me to lead this off? I'm not sure. I can start off. So I think in terms when we as a group, we were thinking about the first question. One of the things that came up again and again was the internal support to integrate efficiency, energy efficient measures with demand flexibility, and how we also need the regulatory support to kind of make sure these two different streams are integrated. A thing that came up in our discussion was how DR programs are more utility driven as a means to drive cost savings, where our EE programs are more often state PUC driven. And there's a lot of discussion that there's such a siloed approach that it's harder for a building owner to kind of integrate all the measures. If they are looking at efficiency measures, they are kind of asked to contact the demand response program to see what all they can implement. So that was definitely a barrier that we saw, and there was the need to integrate the utility side programs. Another thing that came up during our discussions was how it's much easier to move and integrate these programs in a new construction program. And, you know, starting from the early on design phase, that's where you can make the most impact. And we had talked about within that also, you know, you might have cost barriers that are harder to overcome. Another area that there's a lot of work that needs to be done is the lack of education on the benefits of both EE and DR, and how siloed those program offerings are. And we did talk about also, if we are looking at both of these different programs, it made one of the recommendations was to favor demand response measures more, provide more rebates and incentives for that compared to just maybe say a lighting system versus a network lighting measure. I don't know if I'm missing out more, Dan.
Oh yeah, sorry. I had my screen on and I didn't realize I was muted because I had to follow up so I could read my notes. Yeah, Rohini, good job of capturing some of those things. A couple other things that came up. I think the resistance of owners or concerns for cybersecurity looms very large. Having all these little devices that could potentially cause security problems is a hindrance, as well as I also heard just having the grid be able to control things was also a big leap for building owners. Oh, one thing I heard that I think was really important to note is that for commercial buildings, the use of thermal storage and the HVAC savings might be the biggest opportunity for the kind of grid flexible benefits that utilities and grid operators are looking for. So so that I think was important. And again, the point about this all working best when designed early and integrated from the get-go and program as a building is first developed, inspect and built, it's easier to build it in than to add it on just because of the cost and complexity involved. But I think that's, yeah, I think that covers it, Rahini.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Rahini. Thanks, Amber. We have just a couple of minutes before we're going to break for lunch. Before doing so, I just want to ask the group whether anything you heard in these report outs strikes you as an overlapping theme, whether there are any strong differences that are worth pointing out, or any insights whatsoever that these different perspectives provided to you. So I'll open it up. Or anything that was missed in those report outs that you want to make sure gets heard.
And I see, Mike, are you on mute?
No, just giving people plenty of time to think.
Okay. All right.
All right, well, hearing nothing, we're at 12:25 is our scheduled break for lunch, so I think we're in good shape. We will reconvene in 30 minutes, so that'll be 12:55, at which point we will jump immediately into breakout session 2. So we hope to see you back in about 30 minutes.
And if I might just quickly add that breakout session 2, now we've discussed what barriers and how we could evolve programs, but now we're going to leap ahead to just envision what a full-fledged GEB program would look like and what's needed. So kind of being more creative than just problem solving. All right.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, see you back in a few minutes.
All right, bye-bye.
All right. Hello, welcome back, everybody. Hope you had a good lunch break or an opportunity to stretch or answer emails or whatever you chose to do with your 30 minutes. It's good to have many of you back. We're going to jump right in and we're going to we started the screen share. There we go. We're going to jump right into our second breakout session, which is focused on the idea of defining a GEB program. So in the previous breakout session, we discussed how to take an existing energy efficiency program or a demand response program and bring them closer together to an integrated program. This time around, we'd like to see if the group can identify how a GEB program will differ from an integrated EE or DR program. And there's a number of different ways in which they can differ. And we're also going to open up time, if there's time, to discuss what technologies are showing promise for GEB programs. We saw some of that, at least in the residential section before. So curious to see what thoughts all of you have there. Rather than break into separate breakout groups, we're all going to stay in one unified session this time along, but we are going to begin as before with a Google document and 5 minutes of sharing before we get into that. So if we can advance the slide, oh, there we go. Here we are, the instructions. So no need to select a breakout group. All of us will stay in this main session for this portion. Again, for the next 5 minutes, we'll have responses to the questions that are in the shared document. And then we will won't have a need for a report out since we'll all be in the room, but we will just jump straight to conclusions right afterwards. If we can jump to the objective slide, Hannah. Great. So once again, the objectives for this session are to characterize the key elements of a GEB program. So this is, we'd like to hear your vision for what would define a GEB program, any aspects of it. Then identify barriers to those GEB programs and ways to overcome them. And then opportune technologies for GEB programs. We'd like to identify what those are in your mind. I'm going to go ahead now and share the link in the chat for the shared Google document. So all of you can jump over to that right now. And we'll reconvene at about 1:05. So we'll give people 5 minutes to throw down their initial ideas for these objectives and for the questions that are on the slide. Any questions before we jump back in? Okay, hearing none. See you in a few minutes.
I'm technically in a conference right now. I just haven't gotten to like.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. Just trying to give a few extra moments as people write down initial ideas. I get the impression that there is a bit of a challenge in fully defining what the vision may look like, which indicates that there might be some room or space within this group to surface some additional questions that we might have about what these things look like. So even if we don't have particular answers on what an incentive for a GEB program might look like, or what an ideal rate structure might look like, potentially there are uncertainties or questions or ambiguities around that issue. So if you feel as if you don't know what the right answer is at the moment, but have unanswered questions, we'd be happy to use some of this time to surface those as well, so that we can at least get a sense of where people's thinking is at, even if that thinking isn't at a definitive answer yet. But with that said, let's start off with our first question, which is how a GEB program differs from an integrated EEDR program. And the first idea we see is multiple objectives or value stream focus from the very beginning. I'm not sure who left that comment, but would anybody, whoever left the comment or additionally, like to expand upon that idea, the question of how do we, or what does an optimized objectives value stream in a GEB program look like, and how does that differ from simply smushing EE and DR together? So I'll open it up for any suggestions on that idea.
Maybe if I just expand on that a little bit, or maybe shape it a little bit different. Just maybe we need to just the value streams where we're talking what's in it for the customers, and just curious to hear from any of you as to if you're an owner or building manager or familiar with them, from their perspective, what are those values? What would get them interested? Is there a sufficient business case or benefits package to them to want to create a GEB? So maybe that's another way to just kind of frame this up. We do focus a lot on technologies, and just wondering, well, we've got all these cool technologies, but what's it going to take for customers to embrace those and really use them? And will the benefits that accrue to them be sufficient for that investment of their money and other resources?
We did get an answer in the chat, so feel free to please continue to use the chat of if the GEB increases building operational resilience, then owners are more interested. So thank you for that.
I'll also surface that in the previous session, someone took the initiative to introduce an additional question about carbon reductions. It is certainly possible that states or utilities with carbon goals could see a combined efficiency, flexibility, a combined GEB program as being a useful lever to generate or lead to greater emissions reductions. Does anyone potentially see that or something else as a value stream?
It's Laura. Both of the comment in the chat and the prior meeting came from me. And we do have some customers who are interested in tracking their carbon impact, and that is a driver for them. So as much as we can align all of that together, it works for the state, works for the utility, works for the environment, and works for the customer.
So interesting that the benefits that are emerging in this just brief discussion are the resilience and carbon reductions, and haven't heard necessarily cost savings. That always seems to often seems to be the primary focus for these kinds of programs, but it's nice to hear that there's those other benefits that might be driving customers to be interested in this sort of thing, especially with that vision of a GEB with renewable generation and storage capabilities. I imagine that might be another angle.
Dan, I figured the cost savings was evident. And
Okay.
not all customers, of course, all the commercial customers have peak demand charges, but not all residential ones do. So when we don't have a time of use rate for a residential customer, then we really are looking at other opportunities to drive them into these programs. And eventually we'll get to TOUs, but until then, we have to go on these other benefits to get them excited.
Good points.
Can also see if anyone has any thoughts on the resilience angle. I know we've seen calls in various utilities. I'm thinking of various polar vortexes, where utilities have called voluntarily for customers to turn down thermostats in order to avoid constraints on the gas and the electricity systems. Do people see that as a driver in their regions, even if only, I'll just leave it at that.
Maybe circling back to, it'd be very interested in hearing about those, if everyone has a response to Mike's question there. And just a parallel one is looking at the potential cost savings to customers. I'm wondering if some of you who have worked with programs that offer both or familiarity both with customers who are doing demand response and energy efficiency as to where they come down as getting the greatest savings. Are they getting it from the demand response or their energy efficiency, or is it just one of those inevitable just depends?
For that question, it's kind of a both, because there's two different things. It's the efficiency is the reduced power that they're using, and the demand response is rewarding them, giving them a reduced rate by shifting the usage off of those peak times when power is more expensive. So even though they're using less kilowatt hours because of the efficiency, it still is at a lower rate. So there's the cost efficiency of demand response, and then there's the usage efficiency of energy efficiency.
Oh, good point. Thank you.
I'd like to call out this comment under 1.5, the first one, building load. Oops. Now, anonymous armadillo is blocking my way of reading this. So building load is flexible in response to grid conditions, and building is used as a utility resource. And I'd be really curious to hear if anyone at their organizations are using buildings as a utility resource right now, and in what capacity, or if you're thinking about doing it, and if that's like a plan down the line. I'd like to hear from anyone on that topic.
I had written that comment, and for like our demand response programs, it is a lot of it's about just the capacity savings by controlling during those high cost times. Like it generates savings that way, but we're in MISO, we activate them. They're not yet registered in MISO, but if MISO has a weather event or emergency event, we control them too. So there are reliability benefits where it is definitely a utility resource already, but with the grid and with the GEBs, it's kind of more than that, in that a lot of the ideas is that you'd also have like potentially battery, if there is batteries or other storage, that they potentially could even not just stop using power at times, but potentially feedback power, where it would, I guess the idea is it's more dynamic. We don't have anything like that, and I haven't seen any specific examples. We would be interested to see if anyone's really done that or has a good model for it.
Maybe let's, sorry, I'm just getting myself back up here. Screens are all right. I wonder if we want to switch a little bit and just talk about technologies for a GEB, and just kind of thinking through what technologies both at residential and commercial buildings are most attractive and maybe provide the most value, as well as would draw customers in. In some sense, I wonder if it's the renewables and storage capabilities that might draw the greatest interest, and that would get to the resilience benefits that we've been mentioning, as well as some of the carbon reductions. And then is that what's going to get somebody interested in a GEB built in a GEB, and how to, and if so, how do we ensure that there's also the other technologies included that deliver energy efficiency and provide demand response capability? So just kind of throw it out there as to what are the key technologies that you think are going to be would really be targeted in any kind of GEB program from a utility.
This is Phil Coleman with Lawrence Berkeley Lab. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, hi Dan. You know, I do most of my work in the federal government, and what we're seeing is a big increase in the use of battery storage, primarily as an enabling device for solar, because it makes it much more cost effective. But the sites are also pretty enthusiastic about it because they're, particularly in the Department of Defense, they're very concerned with outage times and so on. So the sort of energy security benefits that come along for the ride. But it's the, you know, I think it's the cost effectiveness that the fact that it's making the solar sort of more cost effective, that's making it, you know, the most alluring.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How about anyone experienced with residential? What kind of residential technologies? Is it going to be similar, where customers will be most interested in having that PV system on top of the roof and some batteries to go with it, and maybe a net zero design building? I don't know, just curious to what's going to bring the residential customers into the GEB fold.
So this is Phil again. You know, I don't really work in that residential sphere, but I mean, California is a good example because of the time of use rates. I'm not sure if they're the default or required for the residential customers, but basically that those peak times have been pushed back so that they don't start till, I think they run from like 4 to 9 o'clock. So in other words, solar is pretty unattractive, in terms of payback, and it would be for, any customer that's on that rate.
And something we heard about in our GEB working group is Fort Collins Utility had a program working with, I think, domestic water heaters, and that kind of thermal storage, which came up earlier in the discussion, was one of the kind of early targets for the GEB type technology. And so offering again the off-peak rates and shifting load that way was their angle. Turns out they had some connectivity or problems with the technology becoming obsolete, so they had to update platforms and things. So that was just a technological hurdle. But as far as the targeted end use technology, they were going after hot water. And with smart thermostats that seem to be prevalent, clearly that's going after space heating and or cooling, especially cooling, I guess. But other experience or thoughts about which residential or commercial technologies will really be leading people into this and grab their attention and get their participation?
I can speak a little bit to actually multifamily, working with design assistants for a lot of multifamily projects. It's kind of to both owner interest and technologies. Back to the smart thermostats, it can also come down to marketability. A lot of residents, especially in kind of more of our younger generations, like that connectivity to their thermostat. And there's also smart home control of residential lighting, which is not interactive, but when put together as a package and they can connect their, to their door locks, the smart thermostats are the one we're seeing wrapped in there the most. And then of course you get the benefit there of the demand response capability.
There's also some nice comments happening in the document. So thank you to everybody for doing that. They're still writing in there. So some of them for residential, I see are home energy management systems, residential water heating and HVAC, so thermal storage and variable capacity. And then there was another comment, and I don't know if this was the person that was just speaking, but about more interoperability. A specific example, Nest thermostats being able to integrate with Carrier Infinity AC system, that in the instance, they both have DR capability that they don't use. So that was a personal example somebody put in there. So those are all the ones I can pick out for residential, but I'd love to hear if anybody wants to speak more on that. We'd love to hear from you.
So as a follow-up to what Amber was just mentioning, I'm wondering if what some of you might be thinking as to essentially GEB-enabled technologies, so that manufacturers are putting in whatever technology is needed to interface with the grid control. And so as was discussed earlier this morning, that adding technologies onto existing technologies is usually incredibly expensive, where installing that whatever chips and other interfaces at the outset of a new chiller or new residential heat pump or whatever the technology would be, that is relatively inexpensive, and it's there when if the customer wants to take advantage of it. Do you see any movement that way, or need for some kind of direction of programs in that to get manufacturers to make things grid or GEB enabled? Just wondering, some of you may be participating, or the Department of Energy has the large funding opportunity for really GEB demonstrations and putting this into operation. I'm just wondering if any of you are involved or hope to be involved, or are you developing any kind of pilots or demonstrations? Again, I heard from one of our working group members that they're using their own office building as a platform to learn about GEBs, and essentially they were testing it on themselves before they try to do anything with their customers. So just any of you reporting on any pilots or demonstration projects, working with universities, technology colleges, whatever it might be. Right.
Not exactly in the same space, but we are working with Portland General Electric on their Connected Communities proposal that was funded through the DOE grant that was just announced last week, I think. It's mostly residential focused, but that was kind of why I'm here, is to try to understand better what other folks are doing, so that when it comes through our systems, I have a better idea of how it's been applied or tested and what might work better in our area. And going back to the polar vortex comment, the constraint or the issue that we really saw this summer was the heat dome and turning thermostats up instead of down to accommodate the load.
I have a question for the group. Just curious if anyone has seen any whole building programs or whole building philosophies that have been brought together under kind of a GEB umbrella, or that could be. I'm thinking particularly of examples where we are combining weatherization with electrification and maybe renewable energy and storage, things that typically would have to cross across utility silos. But if they are approached in an integrated fashion, can deliver better results, right-sized equipment that are financially aligned with the outcomes that the building needs and services that the grid needs. Has anyone seen, or does anyone have any vision for how sort of these integrated GEB programs, full GEB programs, could help meet these combined holistic goals that are becoming increasingly important as we are dealing with things like both adaptation and mitigation of climate change, reduction of emissions, and this whole time-sensitive aspect of savings that's so important?
Mike, this is Phil Coleman again. Look, this isn't going to be too relevant for, I think, most of the listeners, because it's not really focused on utility programs, but the federal government, we do a ton of performance contracting, and these, disparate energy conservation measures are, woven together, and cross-subsidize one another in performance contracts in the federal government all the time. It's just about getting a package that will cash flow. So if the revenue's there, then we're happy to do it. I mean, these ESCOs are in general, sort of technology agnostic. They just want to make money. So if the revenue's there, they're enthusiastic about it, and the customers generally are too. But that doesn't really speak to utility programs.
Do you find that there's certain geography or circumstances in which those financials work out more favorably?
Yeah, where the KWH and KW prices are higher. To be flip, yeah, I mean, we see more of it there. It's also where the ISO programs are, they have more lucrative capacity capacity DR programs. You're more likely to see it there. But that's the same, different side of the same coin.
Mhm.
All right, well, I think we're running a little low on steam, but just so maybe it's time to start thinking about some wrap up. How about first one more question for me, and then I'll maybe open it up. And just thinking, we've talked about the different benefits and difficulties in really envisioning a GEB program from a utility or whatever, but just what, is a way to help wrap this up. Just what do you see as the key barriers that's holding things back? What problems would need to be solved through whatever mechanism, whether it's the technology, the regulations, the market structure, or the just customer interest? What's keeping things back? If you could pick one or two things that you'd really need to tackle. All right, well, how about we flip this a bit, and we'll open it up to questions and comments you might have on GEBs and this whole field of trying to get to this more advanced building type. Things that you could ask of us or the rest of the participants.
And if you wanted to use the chat, we're monitoring that too, if that's a better way of answering, if you'd like to type instead of speak.
Going back to barriers, it's cost effectiveness and how we stack the benefit to the utility, the benefit to the customer. That seems to be the main issue we run up against.
Yeah, and I was going to build on that, sort of the earlier discussion we had about value stacking, and it seems like one of the barriers to like the value, the total, regardless of this, when you're stacking up all the values, the total amount needs to be equal to, or, seems like it's competing with, other things like rents and other sources of revenue, for building owners. And so the ultimate value just needs to be big enough for customers to be interested. And then the second, I guess the other barrier, just like in my experience, it seems like there's, more, just a more need for more like customer awareness and interest, sort of market demand for GEB solutions. Because if there's more, a lot of them, you spend a lot of time talking to HVAC manufacturers and water heat. I would say primarily HVAC manufacturers, and a lot of them say that, well, if customers, nobody asks them for the features and the capabilities, and if they heard, if more customers ask for them, they would produce those products.
Anything else? That's on your mind, or questions, experiences? All right. Hannah, is that the final slide. Okay, here we go. All right. Maybe Hannah, do you want to just note that there for some follow-up?
I was just trying to unmute myself. Well, thank you, Mike and Dan, Amber and Rokini for helping facilitate this workshop today, and thank you everyone for joining. If you want more information about EEE's GEB working group, if you're a program administrator and would be interested in joining the group, you can email me, and I put my email here, or you can visit our webpage that EEEE has on the on-grid interactive efficient buildings. And then lastly, I'll just note that we'll be compiling a note from, we'll be compiling the notes from the workshop today, and we'll send that to all the attendees via email in the coming weeks. And those Google documents will still be live. So if you want to refer back to them at any time, you'll be able to. So I think with that, I'll wrap it up. Mike, do you have anything else to add?
Nope.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thanks for your time. I hope this was helpful. All right. Take
Enjoy the
care.
rest of the conference.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.